So I promised you that this week we would be interviewing the bass player on all the 4 albums that Out of the Ashes have produced. And here he is, Scott Whitley. Hi, this is my friend Scott Whitley. Now, Scott Whitley played bass on every album that we have produced. We didn't meet him the first time, but the second, third, and fourth times he came and stayed and played extraordinary bass for us. Double bass. Have you got a name for your double bass, Scott?
I don't, so
Okay.
maybe the viewers at home could help with that, actually.
Yeah, well, I think we need a name. But meanwhile, actually, I want to give Scott a chance to say hello. So say hello, Scott.
Hi, how you doing? And thanks for that lovely introduction.
Well, yeah, I tell you what, I've built you up a bit there, haven't I? So, don't let it fall. Don't let it fall.
No, I'm nervous now.
So of course, you drove down to Oliver's, where we recorded the last 3 albums. First one you recorded in Sheffield. And you live, I thought you lived in Sheffield, but you live somewhere north of Sheffield, don't you? Where do you live?
I do. I live in a little town called Burnley. It's an old, mining town. And, it's about 20, 30 miles north of Manchester. So, it's...
Nowhere near Sheffield. Absolutely.
Nowhere near Sheffield.
Nowhere near Sheffield at all. So that's embarrassing. And you actually have a little bit of a sort of a menagerie there, don't you? You've got some goats, some pygmy goats. What else have you got?
Yeah, we've got 2 pygmy goats, and then we've just got a dog and 3 boys. 3 grown-up sons.
Are any of those house trained?
No. No, the dog maybe. Yeah.
The dog maybe, yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, now, of course, I know you as a bass player. How did you get into playing bass? Where did it all start? How old were you? How did it happen? All those stories.
Okay, so I was always kind of interested in music. My dad was, he played in a band when he was a teenager. And so, I had this kind of fascination with music. And I kind of knew, when I was at school, I kind of knew that whatever I did wasn't really going to be, at the time I felt it wasn't going to be related to O-levels and GCSEs, that sort of stuff. And, like before I got into playing music, I was into breakdancing, believe it or not. And I thought that was going to be a career choice. It sounds crazy. But at the time, people were being sponsored for this stuff. After that, it was BMX, people were carving out a nice little career as a professional BMXer at the time. But then around this time, I met a guy. My dad was a Cub Scout leader, actually.
Right.
And one of the kids there, one of the kids' father, was a famous musician, or he played in famous bands. He played in the 70s band, the Rubettes.
Yeah, the Rubettes.
Yeah, the White Berets and all the rest of it.
Yes.
He played with Cilla Black and Tommy Steele, and earlier than that, Wee Willie Harris, which was like a British rock and roller from the sort of 50s. And he became really good friends with my dad. And off the back of that, my dad sort of, asked if I wanted to go and watch one of this guy's concerts, just at a small venue in Preston, little pub, little boozer. And I think I was 13 at the time, maybe a little older. But I remember, I was probably about sort of 14. And I remember just being blown away with what I saw. And the thing is, these guys I could tell they were improvising. I didn't know that term. I didn't know what that was, but I could tell that they were kind of making things up on the spot. They were playing a tune and messing around with it, and then the guitar player would do something and look at the drummer, and the drummer would go, hey, and like kind of copy it and stuff. And that's really cool. And this guy was a professional musician, right? And I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, that whole relationship, when you see a relationship on stage where things are being improvised and you can see the fun on stage, it's just amazing. But the other thing, I think there was an inclination, and probably still is, I don't know, to be very scathing of the ability of artists in the top 20, the top 20,
Yeah.
and to actually feel that because it's commercial, the rubettes were deemed to be very commercial. Shawaddy Waddy, another one, very commercial.
Yeah.
And what they did was very simple. But when
Yeah.
you actually looked behind the simplicity of what they were doing, they were seriously good musicians that were just doing something very simple.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, Tony himself, he was like, for example, a really accomplished jazz musician. I mean,
yeah,
hence the improvising. I mean, I think the material that they were doing at the time was, excuse me, I think the material they were doing at the time was kind of rock and roll
yeah,
based. Kind of 12-bar based.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it really spoke to me, if you like, and so that began my journey, and I started on guitar. I mean, he was a
Yeah,
guitarist, and my dad had played guitar, and there was a guitar in the house, so it's kind of where I started.
yeah.
I quickly got really interested in drums. I can't actually remember where that specific spark came from, but yeah, I remember really wanting to play drums. And so that's where I was at. I was kind of playing a little bit of drums, a little bit of guitar, trying to get good on both these things. And then inevitably met some like-minded people at school, and we decided to put a band together.
Hmm.
Long story short, there was already a drummer who played better than me. He was going to be the drummer. That was that. There was a guy that was like a blistering, probably not actually, but he seemed like at the time blisteringly good lead player. So that was him.
Yeah.
And then there was another guy who, was kind of like just in the middle, but he obviously just wanted to be a guitar player, and that was it. It was, so it was like, Scott, you're going to have to play bass.
No choice, mate. You have been voted in.
Yeah. And I was like, bass is rubbish. I don't want to play bass. And, but I thought, well, it gets me in a band, and I'll do it for a little while, and then I can get back on the guitar or the drums and pick up where I left off. And but what happened was, I did a little while in, maybe a few weeks or a month or so, and then I came home. I guess I was quite natural at it. I must add. It felt quite easy to do.
Yeah.
So people were kind of commenting on that. So that was nice. But anyway, I came home from school one day. I think it was 15 at this time. And my dad said, did you see Level 42 on the Prince's Trust concert last night? And I was like, no, who are they? Right. I should have known. I mean, I'm the teenager. I'm the one who should know the current bands. But my dad was like, well, listen, they talk about the bass player as being kind of, the best in the world and everything. And he does this slap technique. So he said, I've recorded it for you. I'll put it on. So he played me this. I'd just come home from school, and he put this, this video cassette on, and I was just blown away. Absolutely blown away. Mark King, the bass player, his bass. Bass up here, that's it. The thumb out, and he looked really cool. He had this long Mac on, and I was just the whole image, and it just blew me away. And that was the switch. It was like, that's it. Bass is really cool. And I'll come back to this in a minute. But the band that were playing before giving that away, edit that out. The band that were playing before Level 42, I ended up playing in currently. Actually playing that band, which is really amazing.
Right.
So yeah, that was it. And then after that, I discovered through this guy Tony Thorpe, the guy I mentioned earlier that got me into music in the first place. He knew of there was this kind of handful of really sort of worldwide famous solo, if you like, bass players. It was quite an unusual thing back then for the bass to be known as a solo instrument. And there were probably, like I say, 5 or 6. There was a guy called Jaco Pastorius, Stanley Clarke, Stu Hamm. I guess you could put John Entwistle from The Who in that kind of thing as well, that mold, and maybe like a couple of other guys, where they were kind of doing more with the bass than just sitting in the background.
It was interesting because bass kind of went from being a sort of a grounding instrument to a percussion instrument much more, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Which fitted in with your thing of wanting to play drums as well. Interestingly.
exactly that. You know, and you'll find a lot of bass players that kind of play, you know, the way I do. You know, obviously, I just said I was inspired by Mark King and Stanley Clarke, and yeah, and the kind of the grandfather, if you like, of that style of playing, the slap stuff and things like that, was Larry Graham, and he was in Sly and the Family Stone in the '60s.
I would never have heard of Larry Graham, but I've obviously heard of Sly and the Family Stone.
Right. Well, he was the bass player in that band, and he was the guy that, you know, kind of reputedly invented this slap technique. And it is that he kind of just came up with it as a way of, I think that he was playing with his mum in a duo or a trio, and they lost the drummer. That was it. It was a trio, and they lost the drummer, so they were just a duo. That was it.
And that was how it started.
And he'd like, how can I kind of make it? And he was just kind of like hitting the thing, just trying to make it sound a bit like, you know, filling in where the drums should be. And yeah, invented this whole technique. And yeah, so a lot of people who play this kind of funk and yeah,
that's amazing.
They're thinking like a drummer. It is.
Now, of course, because I've known a lot of great bass players, and some of them have owned 4 strings, 5 strings, 6 string basses. Now you're a 4 string man, aren't you? You don't have any thing that isn't a 4 string bass, but you have what I would see as unusual basses, and there is the Scott Whitley bass.
Yes, there is. Yeah, indeed.
Which Kevin owns one of. Kevin had to have a Scott Whitley bass.
Of course.
So talk to us about Scott Whitley bass. What's special about it?
All right, so I'll try and keep this as short as possible. No pun intended. Most bass guitars, actually. So this is like a regular kind of bass guitar,
fretless,
and it's quite long. No, that's not fretless.
Oh,
but
no,
it's
sorry,
long.
I was being a Burke. Yeah,
it's a bit, you know, and it's so like down this end of the neck. I played them all my life, you know, but there's a lot of stretching to do. You know, you can see the fingers are really stretched out and stuff.
Yeah.
And early on in my playing career, I went into a music shop in Manchester and picked a bass up, and it was what's called a short scale. So this is 34 inches from here to here, and a short scale is about 30. So it's about nearly 4 inches shorter. These are just over 30. Yeah. You know, and it's tuned the same, but it's just much more comfortable to play. So when you're playing kind of a G, it feels more like you're here.
Yeah.
In other words, everything's kind of smaller.
Yeah.
And I loved the feel of it, and I could see that there was a lot of mileage in that. But unfortunately, everything that was off the peg available at the time just didn't sound right. You know, it either sounded, because a lot of 60s basses were short scale, like Paul McCartney's bass.
Really?
The violin was short scale, yeah. And they have that very sort of deep, kind of thuddy kind of sound, which is great. But the stuff I was into, you know, the slap stuff, it didn't really work. So, yeah, over the years, I developed. I'll just wait till Jan sharpened the pencil.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What's really sweet, actually, is every so often I'm seeing Jan's hand come out, pick up her coffee cup, and disappear again. It's fine.
So come on,
let's see your short scale bass.
So, yeah, and hang on.
Now, the interesting thing is that Kevin decided he loved your bass, but he bought one also thinking, great, James, who was at the age of, I don't know what he was he 12 then, and was playing guitar well. But Kevin wanted something James's fingers could reach as well. And James very rarely plays it, but Kevin plays it a lot.
Right,
So come on, plug it in. Let's hear it.
So I'll plug it in. I think I just should quickly say something about it. And basically all it is that after this kind of search for a short scale bass that sounded the way I wanted it, I ended up just kind of making my own. You know, I kind of gave up searching and developed this bass. I borrowed heavily from a lot of other bass designs. But over those years, I've changed pickups in basses and messed around. And so basically this is my design. It's the SWB1.
Yeah.
And yeah. Now this one's really weird because it's tuned as a piccolo bass. You're asking about unusual basses.
Yes.
So this is a regular bass and can sound, just as deep as any other bass, except this one, it's probably out of tune. Let me check the tuning. This one sounds. This is a lead bass, right? It's called a piccolo bass. It's tuned an octave higher, and it sounds like this.
It sounds like a guitar. Amazing.
It does. Yeah. But what's cool about it is, it does sound very similar to a guitar, obviously. And it almost seems like a pointless exercise to a lot of people at first.
Until
over the years, obviously, I've worked. I play guitar. I do play a bit of guitar, right? But I've worked an awful lot on this particular instrument. A bass guitar. So it's got quite wide string spacing, and you use particular techniques that you don't necessarily use very much on guitar, like something about the slap thing, and you play with your fingers. So what it allows me to do is use all those techniques I put a lot of time and effort into learning. But if I want to, I can play melodies and be a lead instrument, So, for example, and it has got a slightly different, because of the way you play it, it's got a different sound to a guitar, And like I say, the slap thing, you can play things that you can play on a regular bass, but in this whole, like kind of solo register.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I love it, and it's something I've been dabbling with a lot, and I've actually gigged. I've done kind of guitar gigs on this. I've kind of decked for guitar players, and I've really enjoyed it. It forced me to come up with chord shapes and things that don't really exist, because nobody plays this. To mention, So it's been fun, and it features quite a bit on my new. I've been working on an EP, and I decided to feature this quite a lot on that. So all the guitar work that you might hear on my forthcoming EP is not guitar; it's all bass.
All piccolo bass. That is so amazing. So
it's fun.
What have you been doing, Scott? You've obviously been in lockdown. So not a lot of gigging going on, like any musician in lockdown. Not a lot of gigging, but a lot of teaching, do I gather?
Yeah, I've been... I always have done a little bit of teaching. I used to do a lot. I taught at college for about 10 years, but over recent years, I think the last 7 years, I've been so busy until lockdown, touring, that the teaching took a bit of a backseat. And I just ended up with like 2 regular students, 3 actually, 2 in America that I taught over Skype, and 1 that I taught locally in person. So I mean, it kind of got to the end of last year, and I went to the, logged into the bank account and went, I think I've got to do something, So I put it out there to I've got a reasonable subscriber base on YouTube that I built up over the years, and a mailing list, and I put it out to everybody out there, because I knew that it's not just me. I mean, anybody pretty much in this industry has just been hit so hard, and people were really what I did is I put it out there, look, I'm not going anywhere, so I've got a lot of time on my hands, and I'm available for one-to-one tuition over Skype. And I put a deal out there, and quite a lot of people took the deal, and so it's not gone berserk, but I've got a nice little kind of base, if you like, of income of students now. So that's nice.
And what would you normally be doing? Because of course you actually play with some prestigious bands. So come on, tell us who you have been playing with in the past, and who you probably will be playing with again next time you're back out there.
Yeah, well, the band that I played with before the band I'm playing in now was The Animals, So it was like John Steele, the founder member, and Mickey Gallagher on keys, who played with them in 1965. And he went on to be one of the members of the Blockheads, still is, during the Blockheads, but they still go out as the Blockheads. So that was good, playing with those guys. And then I think I did that for about 3 years. And then it'll be nearly 6 years now, this year, that I've been playing with Big Country, who were the band. Yeah, I mentioned earlier, they were on the same bill as Level 42 at the Prince's Trust on that video that my dad,
so
for
heaven's sake.
Yeah, so it's really, amazing to be actually playing with those guys now.
Yeah.
And that's fun because it's a completely different kind of gig and style of playing to anything I've really done before. And it's brought a lot of new kind of information and skills, if you like, to my playing. And it's fun, and it's and they've got a quite a huge fan base who are all completely bonkers in the nicest of ways, So and they wouldn't mind me saying that, But so that's fun. But I mean, actually, as it happens, I mean, this is just like news just come in. There is, which I'm not actually that keen on the idea, but it's all going to be done properly. But there is going to be a streamed event that we're going to be filming. Now, I've not moved from I've not moved from the house pretty much for since March.
Yeah.
So but everything apparently is all above board. It's all going to be done with screens and social distancing and all the bits. So that might happen.
That will be great. I mean, the thing is, it is such hard work to put an event on streamed live. So more power to their elbow, as far as I can see.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Scott, a lot of people are gonna watch this, and some of them might be thinking, "Yeah, I'd really love some bass lessons." So come on, Scott, or might want to buy a Scott Whitley bass, because certainly Kevin would recommend it. Website, Scott. What's your website address and your YouTube channel?
So that's probably the. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, we can just put it up in the.
Yeah, you could put it up. I was going to say it's youtube.com/Scott Whitley. That's probably the best place to go and check out what I do, and you can hear the bass on there and all the rest of it. I've got a website which is scott-whitley.com or scott-whitley.com.
And Whitley has an H. Wah-huh.
It does.
Does
it does, yes. And Scott has 2 T's.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Yes. So, that's there's a lot of stuff up there. And I guess if you just kind of can't remember, if you just go into YouTube or Facebook and type Scott Whitley bass, it usually brings something up.
It'll find
just look for the short hair.
Scott, thank you so much. It is so lovely to see your face. And looking forward to actually seeing you in person, and maybe one day being allowed to give you a hug.
I know. Imagine that. Yeah. No, it's gonna be sooner rather than later, I'm sure.
Oh, I do pray so. Thank you. Huge amounts of love, and take care.
You too, and bye everyone at home.
God bless. So that was Scott Whitley, and in 2 weeks' time, you're going to be meeting a gentleman who has played piano for us. He's played with the gospel choir that Kevin and I used to run, and he's an extraordinary man who understands gospel from bottom to top, and is also gracious and kind, and has written quite a few songs with us. Look forward to seeing you then.